Now that we have gone through the basic design of your website, the basic setup, and we have the whole skeleton up there, hopefully you've taken some time and actually set up the majority of your pages and you have a really good grasp on your website. Now it's time to really focus in on the final last steps to really polish this off and make it a great website. And part of that is setting up analytics. So when I talk about analytics, I'm talking about tracking your monthly traffic, tracking your keywords, how people are finding your website, all of that stuff that will give you really good insight into what exactly makes your website tick, why it's getting the traffic that it's getting, or why it's not getting the traffic that it's getting. So in this video, we are going to take a little bit of a look into Google Analytics and how you can get that set up on your website, because it's very important to get set up right away with it, because the sooner you get it set up, the sooner it can start tracking these things. You can get it set up and just ignore it for months or even a year, but at some point you're going to want to come back and see what your traffic was during that time period. So the sooner you get it set up, the sooner you can start tracking it and you can start taking a look at that information. So to get started, we are actually going to go to plugins because we want to just install a new plugin. So we're going to click on add new. So if we search Google, you'll find Sitekit by Google, and that is what we want. So we're going to click on install now. And then once installing it, that doesn't actually activate the plugin. So we're going to want to actually click on activate for that plugin. And there we go. It tells me Sitekit is installed. So we're going to click on Start Setup, and I'm going to walk you through how to do this. So you will need a Google account to set this up. If you don't have one, please set one up right now because you're going to want it. It's a Google service, so of course you're going to need a Google account. So I already have one, so we're going to click Sign In with Google. All right, so once you actually log into your account, it will ask for permission to sign in. And that, of course, is all fine. So we're going to click on Allow. And we need to verify site ownership. So we're going to click on Proceed. So then it's asking to allow Google access to your Google account data. So now it's going to ask just to access data from your website. That is fine. And then it's going to set up the Search Console. So that is basically just their own dashboard that will show you the analytics. So it's asking permission to add the website to their dashboard, and we are okay with that. So we're going to click on Add Site. And there we go. So if we go to my dashboard, it will take us to the Sitekit dashboard. So this shows us everything available from Google. If we click on the Search Console, that is not yet available. So it will take a little bit of time for Google to set up and gather enough data to actually have something to show you. So once you have it set up and installed, that's great. That's perfect. You're also going to want to come over here to set up your analytics. And there we go. So now we have analytics added as well as Search Console. So this one really focuses mainly on keywords and what people are searching for to get to your website. The analytics one will show you how many people are coming to your website and what they're looking at. Once you get more info set up in here, it will be a little bit easier to see what it does, but give it a couple days and come back in here and you'll start seeing some analytics. If you have visitors on your website, if you don't, it will still look a little plain, but you'll get a better idea of what this can do. Okay, so here I have actually come back and it's a day later, so some things are a little bit easier to see in this dashboard. So I wanted to walk you through here really quick what this looks like once it's mostly set up. I don't have a lot of traffic to this website, so it's obviously a little sparse yet, but I can walk you through kind of what some of these things mean so that you have a general idea of what you're looking at here and you can get started on kind of getting an overview of it and analyzing your traffic. So when we come in here to the dashboard, it'll kind of give us a nice site overview. It'll kind of give you your traffic, your search data. Now, my Search Console isn't integrated yet, but I will walk you through that on the actual dashboard in Google right after analytics. So stay tuned for that. But this dashboard just kind of gives you an overview of both things. Right now I'm going to click over to Analytics. So this is Google Analytics, and this gives you insights into the actual traffic of your website and what people are doing on your website. So you'll see here it tells me for the last 28 days I've gotten 8 users on my website. They had 11 sessions and their bounce rate was 54%. The average session duration was 2 minutes and 9 seconds. So the bounce rate and session duration are probably the two things you're kind of confused about here. So the bounce rate, you want a lower bounce rate. Around 50 is probably average, something to shoot for. But basically, the lower the bounce rate is, the more time people are spending on your website. What it means is, so when you see results on Google, when you search for something, it shoots out a bunch of results, and people click on a website, they go into the website, and then they look for what they're finding for, and if they don't see it, they bounce out of there. That's where the term bounce comes from. If they jump into the website and immediately bounce back, that is a bad bounce rate. That would, if everyone spent half a second on your website or less, you would have like 100% bounce rate. That means 100% of people are bouncing back from that landing page they got from Google. But if people visit that page, spend time reading it, and end up clicking to a different page on your website, that would mean they're not bouncing away from your website and they're finding value in that. Google really likes to see that because that means that your site is providing value, so that will lower your bounce rate. So you definitely want a lower bounce rate here because that means people are actually engaging in your website content and finding value in it. So shoot for that, pay attention to this, and see what you get. Session duration, so that just means how much time people are spending on that page or on your website. So this will take an average of all of the visits from the last 28 days, and it says that on average people are spending 2 minutes and 9 seconds on a page on my website. So that's not bad. If we scroll down here, it'll say the top content in the last 28 days. So here's a bunch of blog posts I have, and it will tell you how many page views there are and what that bounce rate is. If we keep scrolling down, it will also tell you the acquisition. So this is the last thing I'm going to go through. That's kind of important. So acquisition means how people found your website. So you'll find two things here. Really, there's a third one that I just haven't set up. The first one is direct. That just means if I go into the browser and type in beaglebrands.com and visit that website, that means it's direct. I went directly to that website and visited it. That's what direct acquisitions are. Organic search means I went to Google and I searched for something and came across your website, or I went to Bing and I came across your website. That's where organic search comes from. And typically you'll see a third or fourth one in here. The third one will be referral. That means someone else is running a blog and they link to my website. Someone was reading that original blog and clicked on that link to my website and visited my content, and that's what a referral is. They were referred by a different website, not through Google or a search engine, but through an actual other website. And then you'll see a fourth one, typically called social, something with social media. But that just means, obviously, you posted a link to Facebook and people clicked on that and found your website. That's the fourth channel you'll see there typically. So that's the third thing on analytics you'll kind of want to pay attention to. That's pretty interesting. How many people are finding it through organic? How many people are finding it through direct? Typically, the one I usually try to target is organic. That's usually where your newer users are going to be and where you can really grow your website. So as I mentioned before, SEO on your website is very important. That's how people can find your website through different keywords. So you definitely want to grow your organic traffic, because that's where, it's free you can spend as much time as you want on your SEO on your website and get people to come to your website for free. So definitely take advantage of that. Direct, I don't know. Those are people that are already aware of your website and returning users typically. So there's not too much you can do there other than engaging that existing audience. But organic, you want to grow that and really pay attention to that. So to give you a quick overview of kind of some things you can do with SEO on your website, I will kind of walk you through what you can do here. So when you're building out your page, there's a few things you really want to pay attention to that Google and other search engines like Bing are going to pay attention to. The number one thing you want to do is make sure every single page on your website has an H1 tag. Now, what is an H1 tag? So every page has different headings, right? And we set different sizes for them in Elementor. So I'll hop in here. So this heading right here, we set to HTML tag H1. And then down here, this is an H2. So there's different levels. The higher the heading level, the more important that keyword is to Google. So when you're looking at keywords, so if you run, I'll go back to cats again. If you're running a cat product business, you want to make sure you put something about cats in here and products or whatever sets your products apart. So let's say I have the best cat water fountains around. So I want to make sure I put the keywords cat water fountains in here and really target those keywords. The other thing is when you're looking at H1 tags, you only want one H1 tag on each page. So that's the one that's going to matter the most and you're going to want to pay the most attention to, but make sure there's only one. If there's multiple, Google will get confused and annoyed by that, so it won't count for as strongly as if you only had one. So make sure you only put one H1 tag on the page. As far as the other ones go, like I said, they kind of go in levels. So H2, make sure you don't have just a billion H2. If something is, a subheading of this, make sure that that subheading is in an H3 instead of an H2. So just make sure there's a good hierarchy there and the flow makes sense. So the other thing you want to do is pay attention to the URL structure of each page. So we looked at this before, but make sure you go to settings, permalinks, and make sure that you're setting it to post name for the post, because when you title a new post, you want to make sure that you're putting keywords into the title of that post. And when you set the URL structure, you want to make sure that post name is being attached to the URL, because when keywords are in that URL, that means a lot to Google, and they're going to look at that and say, all right, that's great. This post must be all about cat water fountains or whatever the heck it's about. So make sure you have that and make sure you change this setting, and that will definitely increase the value of your site's SEO. Other than that, the third thing I want to stress is a very broad guideline, but I want to make sure you understand in SEO, content is king. There is no better advice I can give you other than add more content to your website. The more content and value you have in your website, the more likely people are going to find it in Google, and the more likely your website is going to grow with that organic traffic. So that's why blogs are so important in websites, and I highly suggest you set one up, because that is just an area of your website you can continually grow and add content and give people more and more opportunities to find your website. There's really an unlimited amount of content you can add to your website, and the blog is the best way to do that. I mean, just keep adding blog posts to your website. The more content you have on your website, the better position you are in. You could read about SEO strategies all day long, 24/7, but at the end of the day, if you're adding content and value to your website, that is the best thing you could possibly be spending your time on. So make sure you remember that and make sure you put the time in to increase your content, increase your value, and you will start seeing that organic traffic rise if you follow that. The other part of Google Sitekit is the Search Console. So mine isn't set up here, so I'm just going to take you to my console panel. So this is the main dashboard for Search Console, and this is kind of different from how it's going to look like in your Sitekit when you visit through the dashboard, but this is just the actual direct way to visit it. So I'm just going to walk around kind of the analytics that this part of Sitekit provides, because this focuses more on keywords. So when I come to the dashboard, it tells me performance based on a preset determined amount of time. So in here, it will tell you how many people found my website in Google search results and actually clicked it. Obviously, it's pretty low. This is a pretty low trafficked website that I haven't really established yet. But to give you an idea of what you're looking at here, if I come into performance here, it will give me even more results. So when you look at these statistics, you're going to find 4 different things. You're going to find the total clicks. As I said, those are people that actually clicked on your website in the search results. You're also going to find impressions. Now, impressions means how many times your website appeared in the search results. So when we look at this, it will come down here, and these will be keywords people are typing in to find your website. So someone typed in slug WordPress SEO, and that showed up 2 different times in the search results. If we keep going down here, it'll do the same thing. Web designer without coding showed up 1 time. Again, this is not a highly trafficked website, but you get the idea. It will also tell you for each of those how many people clicked on it. I don't have any right now, but it will tell you that. The other things you have in here aren't quite as important, but we'll take a look. So you'll also have the average click-through rate. So on average, how many people are clicking through to your website, and then also the average position in the search results that your website hits. So if your website is at number 1, that's super good. That means you're the number 1 search result. The lower you are, the worse off you are. But I would recommend definitely paying attention to your total clicks and your total impressions. That will give you a good idea of how your site is performing. So obviously, if these graphs really start taking off and you start seeing a lot of purple and a lot of blue, that's really good. That means you're getting a lot of organic traffic. You can also come down here and sort by pages. This is what I do a lot. To see how a specific page is performing in the search results. So you'll see in here the specific blog posts or landing pages you have that people are actually clicking on and are appearing in the search results. So you can kind of see how they're performing. So that's a pretty brief, quick overview of Sitekit and what it can do for you. Make sure you install this, set it up, and then just forget about it for a few months. Don't even look at it. Don't analyze it for at least a few months until you start getting some data in here. As you can see, it's kind of sparse when you first get started, so it's not even worth spending time on, but it's absolutely worth getting set up so that Google can start tracking your analytics and start getting those statistics together so that when you want to pay attention to them, you can, and they are there ready for you. So we are going to wrap things up here. Hopefully you have the majority of your website set up. In the last video, we are just going to go through some other plugins you can install that will really increase the value of your website and productivity. So stay tuned.